Cool. I just pushed record. LaJeromeny, thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube interview series.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. For those of the people out there who don't know, are you an apprentice with the company or a core member?
I'm actually a core member.
You're a core member. Amazing. When did you get your core contract?
2018 of November. It's it's actually crazy because we got our contracts on a Halloween, and we literally started rehearsal for Nutcracker like 5 days later. So it's like, life dream accomplished. But then I was like, wait, this is actually a lot to process. Like I had 5 days to like completely reset and like get it together. But honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way because if I would have had to like stay in the school for longer than I did, I think I would have gone crazy.
Yeah.
Because I was definitely like at the point in my life where I was like, if this doesn't happen for me, like I don't know what's gonna like. I was having like the worst anxiety and panic attacks. Like
it's a hard time for young dancers.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And you watch it like the years prior to when you're getting to that level. You're like, oh, I wonder, I didn't think it would be this serious, but it really does get that serious because like you've trained all your life for this one big thing, and you're like, but what if it doesn't happen?
Totally. That's exactly it. And also like the other weird thing I look back on is like you have all these close friends you become bonded with in the school, and you don't know if your lives are going to end up going in the same direction, or if you'll even make it into companies, if you'll make it into the same companies. It's like in a very quick matter of time, your friends and you have shuffled out across the world, and you have no control over it.
Yeah, you're just like, well, this is what it is. Like, it's also the peak of when you're like understanding that everyone has a different journey.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I know that these people will no longer be here with me, but I know that where they're going or where they're going to end up is what's best for them. Like, maybe this environment that we all thought we were supposed to be a part of isn't really set out for you, or isn't really set out for your pathway. And so, like, I constantly, like, I'm glad that I have a lot of friends who are there who are just like, that just wasn't for me. Like, that wasn't the pathway that I was supposed to take, and just like accepting that also. And just kind of like keeping it open, because I was afraid that like, I hope I don't lose friends because I got it and they didn't. But I'm so lucky to say that like that wasn't the case, and like
that's great.
The fact that people can understand this is our own personal journey, and all we can do is just support one another and aid one another in best ways possible. So I definitely like learned a lot of lessons like in that process of making that shift. But yeah, it was definitely like super crazy. Like having to get your apprenticeship, and then 5 days later, like having to be in a company, in a space with people like you. Oh, I don't think you were back at that point.
Yeah, I wasn't back.
Like,
I must have come back 2 months after
you
arrived.
You came back for winter season.
Yeah.
So that might have been the beginning of 2019.
Actually, when you got your apprenticeship was when I had my baby.
But just like all of a sudden being in this space with people who I like worshipped basically. And then, like, also dealing with, like, the feelings of, like, I'm inadequate. Like, I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not good enough to be here.
I felt the same way in the school. And I tried to, like, share this with people because I have had success, and I easily remember back to that time where when I was in the school, I wouldn't even go and watch the company dance because I was too overwhelmed by watching them. I thought it was so out of reach. I thought they all had bodies like I didn't have, and I would never fit in. And it felt like if I went and watched New York City Ballet perform, it was going to like rub it in that I felt different. And so it seems crazy now.
Would have never known that.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's really insane. Like,
yeah,
Megan Fairchild felt.
I know, and I'm embarrassed to admit because I should have been doing research on these things, but I was so overwhelmed by what I was idolizing and hoping to be a part of. So I totally hear you. And those first few years are intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally intense. Like, wow. Like the amount of, like I learned a lot in a short period of time. And it's also overwhelming. You're just kind of like, So at that point, that's when I started like delving a little bit more into spirituality and meditation and all that kind of
You are
inspiration.
so wise beyond your years. This is incredible talking to you. I can't wait for this interview. This is so great. We're going to delve into all of that. But I want to start with your journey about how you got to New York City Ballet. How did you get to SAB? Where did you start getting interested in ballet? And I'm always interested in this question for men because it's not such an obvious thing to
Right.
want to be engaged in. Did you have a sister that danced?
Oh, okay. Honestly, so I went in elementary school. I was very much so. I knew I was very different. I wasn't really sure in what ways at that point, but as far as how I dressed, how I talked, and how I just exuded a different energy than most of the kids that I was around. And I was like, okay, well, I know that I don't want to be in a space where the things that I'm not good at are going to be worshipped. Like, and sports are like something I definitely could excel at if it was my interest. I played baseball once, and I actually got like the game ball my first game because I'm just like a hard worker and like whatever I put my mind to, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be my best at anything. Um, and so I was like, okay, sports are definitely not for me. So me and my mom were like, okay, well, what are our options as far as middle school? So in middle school, I was like, let me go to this performing arts school that I had heard about. You know, basically for the creative, weird kids. You know, there's that school like that for everybody.
Let's not say weird.
Okay, yeah, not weird.
Let's say unique.
Weird as far as like the standards of what everybody else is thinking.
Totally.
But the people, like this space where people are completely organic and completely themselves. Let's say that.
Yeah.
That's definitely a better framing around it. And that's why I put air quotes around weird, because that's the construct.
Yeah, I get you.
But I definitely was like, oh, because I'm a very talented artist as well as far as drawing. And so I was like, do I want to pursue visual art or do I want to dance? Because I grew up, you know, watching YouTube videos, just popping and locking and dancing and, you know, all those kind of things. So dancing had always been very close to my heart. And my mom also, she was in a band. So she was like a dance team captain and things of that nature. So like rhythm and just music and movement in general has always been a part of my life. But as far as ballet, I was like, okay, I'll just go for dance. I've never seen a boy do it before, so I might as well be the first. And then I walked into the school, and they were like, well, we haven't had a male dance major, and we don't know how long. And so I was like, well, here's your unicorn. So in the sixth grade, I ended up in like an intro to dance class. Basically, just very basic vocabulary and very basic positions and conditioning. We weren't really doing ballet, more like a creative movement class for sixth graders. And so I was like, okay, I would see the more advanced levels, and I'd be like, okay, well, we're doing child's play here. So I literally, like my first year, I'm like, so how do I get into the next level? She was like, well, you need more ballet training, like outside of school. Also, sorry if my brother is screaming.
No worries. I have a bunch of interviews where my babies
adds more character.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, what do I need to do so I can be in the next level? Because I don't want to do this for the next year. So she was like, well, go take some ballet. So I ended up like, I was training at this studio called York City Dance at the time. And
people don't know where you're from. Tell everybody where you're from.
Oh, I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, for those of you who don't know. But yeah, so I ended up taking like some ballet classes over the summer at this competition studio called York City Dance. And we were also in a space where like my mom couldn't afford for like actual ballet. So I had gotten scholarship like for the full year at this comp studio, but then after that year was up, they're like, sorry, you can wash mirrors, but you still are gonna have to pay. And so we're like, okay.
Yeah.
No. So I ended up going to this place called Ballet Tennessee, and they basically like took me in like full arms with their scholarship program.
Amazing.
Called the Talent Identification Program. So through there, I actually started getting like very good ballet training and very good information. So I started like serious ballet when I was 12, and that happened like 2012, 7th grade year. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started doing ballet.
Are you the oldest in your family?
I have an older sister on my dad's side, but on my mom's side, I am the oldest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely
So.
seem like the leader of your...
Yeah, in a sense, yes, in a lot of ways, because like I'm also doing a lot of things that people in my family have not done before.
Right.
So in a sense, I am like the leader of like, okay, this is, breaking a lot of generational curses in a sense as well. Like, this is what we've been doing, and I've just been trying to, literally my whole life been cultivating, okay, well, what can I do differently that can put us in a different place? So I've always been very introspective and very, like, I acknowledged the things that were going on around me, and I had a lot of information, and I saw a lot of different things because I was seeing like the perspective of the world from like the worst place, but also I had been in spaces where people were on a completely different end of the spectrum. So I was kind of like, oh, okay. So like with my experience and my background, it's just like, how can we
bring these
combine
together,
all these things and share? So that's just been kind of like, so in a sense, I do feel like a leader in a
That's
lot of
amazing.
ways. Yeah.
So you feel like you had this hope of what could be, but you also had a great like reality check of the real situation, and
Exactly. Because like honestly, perspective is very important. I was in not necessarily great environments. I had a great, like, my family support system is amazing. My mom and dad took very great care of me. There were just things like just being black in America. Those were challenges that were placed in my life, and I was like, well, it sucks that this is the way that it is, but like we just have to navigate this as best as possible. So that's just kind of the outlook I had on it. I literally would be in the projects, like coming home late from my ballet lessons. There'd be like shootouts, like stuff like that. But I was like, well, this situation is temporary.
So
Like,
you're going from one world to a completely different in one,
right.
just every day.
So I'm going to ballet with all these super rich white girls who have big houses in the hills and go to private schools, and just have it basically all laid out for them, getting cars right at 16, brand new cars at that. And it's just like, wow, like they're just, doing it all. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad that I'm getting exposed to this, because if I not, like, I probably would have been a little bit more stagnant and not knowing where to go. But like seeing what was possible, and like actually being in a space where seeing like, oh, okay, well, this is how these people have it. This group of people have this set amount of comfortability, and so that even gave me more drive to be like, okay, well, I don't have that, so I have to figure out and use all of my resources so that I do.
Amazing.
So I've always been very resourceful. Like, as far as like my mom didn't have a car, so I literally had to like talk to my dance studio and like set up a carpool situation, and like, and if I had to for my audition for SAB, they don't come to Tennessee, so I had to like figure out how was I going to get 2 hours to Atlanta for an audition, and it was crazy because at that point in my life I was also coming out, and so my family was like, it was new to them, and I'm glad that we're in a place now, where we've grown a lot in just understanding the experience in its whole. But at that point, I was like, we weren't necessarily in a great place. Like, my dad was actually threatening to pull me out of ballet because he felt like that was the reason that had swayed this decision. And so, not to paint him out as a bad guy, because like naturally, like a lot of people have these limitations and thinking like this is the only way to be the best you can be. And he always wanted me to be great, and he always gave me all the resources to do so. But like it was just this one thing that I feel like he probably felt like he didn't do his job as a parent, like because his son ended up gay.
How did you find the strength to come out to them? At such a young age, too, you seem to really know yourself.
It was actually an accident.
Oh.
Because I had been texting one of my friends about it, and my mom was like using my phone for some reason. Like, there was like that moment of like her feeling betrayed, because my mom's always gave me the space to be as open and as truthful as I wanted to, and she felt betrayed because she was like, because she's asked me before, she was like, are you gay? Like, you can tell me, like.
I think moms usually have an idea about it.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, I kind of thought she knew, but like I was scared, and so she was also like, her anger also was conjured up in like, how is the world going to treat my child?
Totally.
Like, we were literally just talking about that not too long ago. She was like, it wasn't that I was upset that you were gay, it was more along the lines of like, how do I protect you best? Because this world is literally going to do every single thing it can to tear you down. And that's just like, that's the truth of it. And especially being a Black gay man, it's just like, it's like all the parts. It's like, I have to acknowledge that I have these struggles as a Black man. And then I have to acknowledge that I have these struggles as a Black gay man. And then, just kind of keeps spiraling in a sense. And there's just different aspects that you have to take into account. And so, yeah, she was just like, people are calling you names, like the potential of violence, because these things still happen, like, and it's crazy. And so that's where most of the problems went. But that was when my dad was like trying to pull me out of dance. But at that point, I was like, well, this is what I want. Like, because I had been watching the Strictly Ballet videos on Teen Vogue. And I was like, is this like, these kids live this lifestyle? They like move away from home to New York to do ballet. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, that's for me. And I literally like would see New York City Ballet on videos, and then I see other companies, and I'm like, I don't want to move Black men. Like, I want to go to. I was like, City Ballet is where I'm going to end up. Like, no matter what. Like, I was really manifesting.
That's incredible.
Yes, and like the whole, like, even my teacher was like, well, you're probably not gonna get into SAB, but I'm glad she had the conversation with me, because it really, really humbled me, like, before. So she didn't say it like she was like, I don't want you to like, get your hopes too up, because this school is very selective. And I was like, okay. So I came into that audition that I one of my really good friends, her mom, actually drove me down there on a Saturday, and she's still like very much so active in my life now as far as giving me support. And I'm just like, wow, that was this, like, looking back at it now, it's like that was the start of an amazing relationship. And she still to this day is like calling me and checking in, like, do you need this, posting on Facebook if I need anything. Like, literally, just, her name is Julie Sanders, I'm gonna put her name out there. She's just incredible, and she drove me to this audition. And yeah, my teacher had given me this like kind of pep talk, and it really humbled me. And I was like, okay, well, go in here with the best intentions, do your best. And it was crazy because that audition was the one that I was least nervous in. I felt at home.
Who was your auditioner?
Katrina Killian.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I believe it was Cheryl Ware who was actually teaching the class. Katrina was at the front of the room, and she was like walking around her.
Yeah.
Well,
with her glasses.
Yes. So she's like, Kim, I also made the boldest decision to wear purple to my audition. And like, they had no dress code. It was just like solid color shirt, black tights. So I was like, okay, well, let me wear a purple t-shirt and black tights. And everybody was like, don't you know this is SAB, like a white shirt, white socks. And I was like, oh, now I'm like, well, it probably got me noticed, like, if we're being completely honest.
Absolutely.
I was the only boy in that audition. And I was like just hankering on the age group. And the group after me were so many boys, but I just so happened to be the only one in that particular audition.
So how old were you when you auditioned?
15.
You were 15, okay.
Yes. And what was really insane.
So you've been dancing for 3 years?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I got like they were like, I was so nervous at the end because I was one of the first numbers, and they were like, "Can you go to the end of the line?" And I was like, "Oh gosh." But anyways, like at the end of my audition, they were like, "We're gonna give you a full merit scholarship," and I was like, ah, "What? You said what?" Like I was just like completely baffled, like coming into this place like basically thinking like, "This is really a reach. Like you're really reaching." And then they took pictures of me, and I was like, okay, like, and when I walked out of the room, everybody was just like, and I was just beaming. I was just so like happy. And they ended up talking to me, and they were like, okay, we're going to give you more information and all that kind of stuff. And my dance teacher, she was like, oh, well, I still want you to, go and do your auditions. And I was like, for what?
Yeah.
For what? Like, the decision's been made. Like, this is where I'm going. Like, come on. So I ended up getting that scholarship and ended up there for the summer. And I actually did, like, a lot of fundraising because, like, I was like, I don't want to go up there, like, because me and my mom, we were kind of struggling at that point because we didn't really have the support of my dad anymore, because he's a black man and he's been dealing with the incarceration system for quite some time, and it's just like, in a sense, like, at first it was like, why can't you make good decisions? But it was also like, this is also a system that doesn't allow you a second chance, in a sense. Like, you can't just rejoin society, because he's very much so a businessman at heart. Like, he's started so many things, like owned automotive shops, trucking companies. Like, he's done a lot of really amazing things, but like with this other added aspect of not ever really truly being given a true start over, he has to often go back and resort to things that don't necessarily work. But that's just the reality of it. So now,
and I think the rest of society is finally properly realizing that.
Yes, and I'm hoping that, like, continuing to share about these different experiences and, like, opening people's eyes to, like, these are real people. Just because, you might see them in a magazine, or, because my dad, he's dealt with a lot of true crime things, and so I often get insecure about the fact that, like, because I'm named after my dad, and so when people Google me, his mug shots and all of his background comes up. So I'm often like, oh, like, but no, it's like, that's what I am. Like, this is what I come from, and if you
need to know the whole story, everyone.
Yes, and so it's just like, well, I am a reflection of my father. Like, there's a lot of really amazing things that I've learned from him, and I really do. Like, my business mindset is definitely from my dad, and so often I'm just like, you people need to see, like, this might be what it looks like, but this is the reality of it. Like, that he's very family oriented. He takes very good care of everybody but the news and media would be like, this is a criminal. He's a terrible person. So it's like, I'm constantly, like, trying to figure out how to best navigate that as well, and just, continue to put my best foot forward. And this is also, like, the first time I've been very open about my dad. And I know that this is a public platform as well, so this is the first time I've actually, like, talked about him.
I'm glad you're sharing it, though, because I know that you're going to help people out there, people who are in the same boat as you, people who don't understand what those kinds of experiences are like and how one would get there. So
Right. And so it's just like, my mission in itself is just like showing people that, like, yes, you can come from this space and still create your own success. Like, you just have to, figure out a vision, have a plan. I'm really trying to instill in my community in general, like, if you have a passion, create a business out of it. Stop working.
Right.
Just, especially during this past time of what's been happening with COVID, and seeing it as, like, the government doesn't really support in a way that they should. I'm hoping that it gives people more the motivation to create their own type of success and wealth, because at this point, like, we can't even depend on jobs anymore, because I mean, even as being dancers right now, it's like, we're gonna be like the last of it. Like,
I know.
If it does go back to being normal, like, who knows what that is going to look like. So I'm also at a point in like, okay, well, how can I take my other passions and create an empire out of that? Because I honestly, I will not work. I will not work. Like, everyone's like, oh, why don't you just, get a little... No, I'm not doing it.
You mean, so like, when you say work, you, like, go get a job at, like, Starbucks or,
yes,
like,
yes.
a grocery store? Or, like,
if I have to put on a name tag, if I have to put on somebody's office, nothing. I don't want it. Like, working in retail, like, that's not something I see for myself, because I know my skill set is, like, too valuable.
And
like,
you're a dreamer.
Yes, I'm a dreamer, and I'm like, if I know what is possible, like, if I'm in spaces where I've seen it happen,
right,
there's no way I'm going to sell my short and dedicate 12 hours of my day to go work a job when that 12 hours could be put into me manifesting and creating these businesses and these endeavors that I'd like to see myself in.
You're incredible. You are so wise for your, what are you, 19?
19. I'll be 20 in a few weeks.
Incredible. And honestly, I really think it speaks to what kind of people your parents truly are. Like, you've gone through some more difficult experiences than other people that you've seen around you, but you're not bitter about it. You're empowered by it.
Yeah.
That's incredible to me.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, like, that's the thing. When I talk about perspective a lot, because I'm like, you either sink or you swim. Like, are you going to let these be the things that keep you stagnant and in the same place that you've seen other people do? Or are you going to take this information and, like, how can I apply this journey, this story to create my most success? And that's literally, I've been seeing more success the more and more open and more I've been authentic to myself and sharing my passions. And, like, people are noticing that.
Yeah.
And it's not something I was experiencing at first. Like, when I first got into the company, I was like, nobody sees me.
You were very, very quiet.
And what's crazy is I'm not really quiet.
I'm realizing that.
I'm just very much so, like, when I get into new environments, I'm very observant. I have to, like, what energies do I need to stay away from? Who do I need to maybe ask questions? So a lot of the time I'm very quiet, and especially when it comes to being in a dance space, I'm very much so focused on what's happening internally and how, because there's a lot of things, like, especially when my first day, I won't say anything, but my first day in City Ballet class was like, don't come in here and think you're not going to work. And they were like, you didn't do a correct time to back. And it was a correction, but the energy was like, wait, I'm sorry. And I also had, like, I took like 5 days off after I found out that I got my apprenticeship because I was literally having stress reactions in my shins. So I was like, okay, let me take that. I told John, I was like, I'm going to take these next days off. So, like, when we start next Tuesday, I'll be really smart. Like, I'll take care of my body, like, because now I know that I have a job that I need to. Because like, when you're in the school, you're like, well, I can't give up now because people are watching.
Yeah, you totally. Students, I think, push through more pain than any. Yeah. Professionals.
Totally. And I was like, okay, well, I took that 5 days off. So really, that first day of class was like my first time dancing in a while. And I was still trying to figure out how to navigate my body without injuring myself. And then also, like, noticing, like, in those first couple days was like, wow, I'm really not strong enough. Like, I really need to, because for my body type, at least, like, I feel like in the school I worked with shorter teachers, and so nobody really, the only one I had that I feel like really understood was, like, Scordato and Arch. I think we all, like, I had a lot. I'm not gonna say, like, all the teachers weren't useful. They gave me a lot of really amazing things. But as far as, like, understanding my body, like, I feel like I didn't really get that in the school.
Yeah, because you have really long legs.
Yes, and arms too, and then my torso is like this big, and so,
which is beautiful.
Yes,
but it can be difficult.
Really beautiful, but I was so weak. My core, like, just I was like, why don't I have these types of muscles, and why can't I get this sort of engagement? I literally couldn't even do a passe balance, like, for longer than 5 seconds. And, you know, like, that was, and I was like, but all of these people around me are doing this, why can't I? So, like, literally, I was like, I'm not good enough to be here, like, and it also kind of, it humbled me in a sense because I changed my perspective in the midst of all of it. Like, I had, like, a few months where I was just so, like, down and in a negative space, and I feel like that's also a lot of the reason why I was quiet, because I also feel like people weren't really acknowledging me. But it was also probably because I, just the way that I presented myself probably didn't say from the beginning. But I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't, like, I was just so nervous about everything. And I feel like people just saw me as this reserved, kind of like bitchy kind of character, which is not even remotely close to like who I am at all. But like, that's what people were seeing. Like, you just say, oh, you're very quiet.
Yeah.
Like, didn't say much. But, and because after the first day, I was like, when that person said what they said to me, I was like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to, you know, talk, or maybe I need to be quiet and just. So I feel like that kind of internalized.
Did you feel like you came in kind of excited, and then they like made you feel like, oh, I'm supposed to be here and work and never like even
honestly
enjoy?
Like, I was already having like such. I feel like the fact that I knew so much change was about to happen, like my body was internalizing like that extreme change. So my anxiety was like through the roof. I was literally having a panic attack like the whole ballet class. Like,
and you can't dance
like,
your best that way.
Yes, and I literally was like, oh my God, people are gonna see me and think I'm like not that. And I was literally like, most of my few months of dancing in the company, I was dancing anxiously.
Wow.
Like, I couldn't even, and when I'd ask questions, like when I get asked questions, I just like get so frazzled because I like, I know it, but like, you know, it just like, I was just so up here, and like, I then was like, this is not healthy. You can't continue to work from a space like this because people are definitely thinking of you negatively because this is a space that you're working from. And honestly, I'm harder on myself than anybody. So, like, I'm probably internalizing that. I'm just, like, giving the real spiel of how I felt, like, internally. But it was, like, my anxiety was paralyzing. Like, I literally was, like, in a ballet class. Like, the strength that it took for me not to walk out of my first, like, class with the company was, like, I was just breathing. I was like, okay. Like, it's okay. You're going to get through this. Like, I just so badly wanted it to be over. But I was like...
I had that experience when I first did NutPaw. I never felt that way. I mean, company class is incredibly overwhelming when you first arrive. It's just too many people, and too many people that are kind of like, not jaded, but like they do it every day. So it's not like they're going to be like, welcome, and, you know, it's just down to business. And so for me, it was when I stepped on stage in my first really big principal role, and, well, Nutcracker, and the lighting's dark, and then you have this big spotlight on you, and I just was like, I just want to walk off the stage. I just want to walk off. Like, I just wanted to get out of that experience. I did not feel safe or comfortable, so I hear you there.
Yeah, and it's, oh gosh, I'm like laughing so hard about it now because like I really was like I was not okay. And I still, you know, I was like, okay, maybe it'll make sense in the future. Because I really was like, do I really need to be in City Ballet? Because I had that whole realization as well. I was like, am I really cut out for this lifestyle? But, you know, after, like, I did a lot of reflecting, and that's when I started meditating.
Yay!
And so that's when I started meditating, because I was like, okay, we need to figure out the tools in order to aid this as best as possible.
Who put it on your radar to meditate?
I feel like it wasn't a person in particular, but I was researching like how to deal with anxiety. And my mom, she deals with similar things as well. And so she didn't necessarily say meditate, but I was just like trying to figure out. I was like, I'm going to look up every single way I can do to not feel like this. I started meeting with the SAB therapist.
Amazing.
And all that kind of stuff. So, and then like, she basically, the therapist, when she talked to me, like, I was just like, wow, I'm really just like overhyping all of these things. Like I'd be like, I'm scared, my heart is beating so fast, and then she'd be like, it's supposed to. You're small. Like she was like, you're a skinny guy, and I was like, well, I see it like beating out of my chest. She was like, you're a skinny guy, like that. That happens for everybody. So she just was kind of like, she pulled me back down, and from there on out, I was like, okay, like these feelings can get very intense, and even to this day, like I still will have anxious moments, but I'm like, okay, this too shall pass. Like you have to just guide yourself through the whole experience.
And you also have the tools you need to overcome it. So,
right.
Do you know that I'm a big meditator too?
I did not know that, but it makes sense now because, like, you can tell, like, the people who show up at work with so much, like joy and just peace, it's like, you can tell. I knew, like, from the beginning, I knew Lauren Lovett was the meditator. I was like, yeah, she's a meditator.
Yeah.
But no, it definitely makes, it makes a lot of sense that you do.
I have a more anxious personality. I kind of, like, get worked up really easily, and I had these moments earlier in my career where something would trigger me to pass out. And I have really low blood pressure, but like, I don't know if I would like cut my finger because I was like working on my point shoe shank, or I hit my head in a rehearsal and then I passed out, but it started happening kind of frequently, like if I had to get a shot for a bone scan, an injection, like they all kind of were work related, and they ended up taking me out of commission at work for a while. And finally, when I was like 30, Rosemary pulled me aside. Rosemary, for those watching who don't know, she is the main ballet mistress of all of the corps de ballet. Everyone for the last, I would say, 50 years have learned their core parts from Rosemary Dunleavy, yes. Which is incredible. Balanchine appointed her to her position, but she was like, I think that you need to meditate. She's the one. And like, I was a principal. We didn't really encounter each other a ton. Like, and she was a meditator, and she does transcendental meditation.
Really? Oh my god!
Yes.
No, this is insane that I'm like hearing this now, because she's also a person who, like, I was so terrified of her.
Everyone was.
She couldn't see me. Like, she didn't see me. She just saw like the aura I was presenting, and the fact that she's like, she does transcendental meditations and that she is that tapped in, like, makes me, like, understand her even more. Because once I did do all of my self-discovery and, like, started doing all this meditation and getting all the resources and tools, I was like, oh, Rosemary's not scary at all. Like, she's not at all scary.
Yeah. She's just getting the job done.
Yes, and she's very real. She's very real. And, like, what I have to understand is, like, if you don't, just be honest. Like, if you don't know it, just say you don't.
Exactly.
Ask the question. And so I was trying to, at the beginning, you're like, well, I want to, like, be my best, and I don't want to, make it seem like I don't know what I'm doing. But, like, she has so much more respect for you if you're like, I'm sorry, I don't know what this is. Could you explain it? Or, like, if you raise your hand and be like, wait, I missed this one step. Could we go back over it?
Yeah.
But what she does,
every teacher. Every teacher is that way. And I think every ballet student feels like if they ask a question, then they're going to be seen kind of weaker. And it's like, no. If you don't say anything and then you do it and you don't know it, that's when we're frustrated.
That's when we're upset. Yes. And I guess that's also ballet culture, and I'm glad it's, like, changing now. I'm hoping that in the next few years, or people are going to start, like, being more open. I feel like after this whole time period of being off, I think it's definitely going to allow people to just be human and not necessarily, okay, well, these are the things in society that we were conforming to, or these were the belief systems, but now we have to, like, step away from that and we have to move forward. So I'm hoping that, like, it won't feel uncomfortable to be like, hey, I have this wrong. Like, can we troubleshoot that? Exactly. And I guess, like, as a student, you're, like, trying to be such a perfect being, when in reality you're never going to be perfect at ballet. Like,
we're all human.
Exactly. And so I even have to understand that within myself. I'm like, okay, I got to a point where I was like, okay, you might have this really long body right now that you might not have that much control over, but let's start small in building it and creating the strength that you want to see. So once I had that perspective change, everything got so much healthier. Like, I was like, this class right now, I can't do this at this particular moment in time. But I know if I consistently keep thinking about using these muscles and engaging this, that I will be able to do that. So once I started having that mindset about class, like class started to become this like beautiful, like spiritual experience because I was like, wow, I'm an imperfect mess right now. But just imagine what it's going to look like in like 2 years when
Right.
the body is when I'm strong. And I was like, wow, there's so much beauty in that growth because I feel like the people who come right into the company who are strong and have their bodies like pretty figured out have more success, and just get the information or like the acknowledgement much more quickly. And so for me, I was like, I don't feel that. And because one of my really good friends, Jules, is a very strong dancer. And so, like, I was dealing with, like, I've never been jealous of him, but I was, like, acknowledging, like, oh, like, I don't know, this is,
Well, you kind of see around you and feel like, am I measuring up? And
exactly.
because
like,
we don't get much feedback.
Exactly. There's none at all. So I was just very scared about what was going on. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I hope they like me. Because I was like, I really want to be here. But I really stepped away from that thinking. And
Good
I'm just
for
like,
you.
you just show up and be your best self
Exactly.
every single day. And they will see that. And, by the time I got to my meeting, they were like, we've seen you grow so much. And I was like, thank you. I know. I know. And I know that. And what was crazy was I can't think of, I don't remember. Oh, yeah, no. Okay, so this was after I had been in the company for a year. I ended up losing my younger brother, who was 9, and I lost my grandmother within a month of that.
Wow,
And
I
so
had no idea.
Yeah, I had my meetings, and I told them, and they were like, mouths like to the ground, like just completely surprised. And I was like, well, like, this is a space that I come here to work, and it kind of puts me in a different mind space to continually grow towards being my best self, because that's kind of my perspective on death now. It's like they may not physically be here, but I know that their spirit and their essence will always be. And I feel like the best way of grieving for myself is by continuing to live my life in a manner that I know they would have wanted to see me in. Especially like my grandmother and my brother, like, they were 2 people who loved me a lot. And I know that my little brother especially, like, idolized me. He thought I was some kind of celebrity. And so, like, my grandma would literally post about every single thing that I do. Like, like, my grandmother was manifesting me dancing in New York even before I believed it. Like, she'd tell people, like, oh, my baby's going to New York to dance. And I was like, Grandma, I'm not. Like, that's not. Then it happened. Like, she had been manifesting this. But, like, and that's why I was like, oh, my gosh. Like, I have to believe in myself first before I can do anything. And so, like, just with losing them, I learned a lot of lessons about life. And I'm appreciative of it. Like, I have days where I really miss them and where but at the end of the day, I know that, like, that was supposed to happen to me so I could then tell my story and then share that journey. Because now I do deal with people who are dealing with loss, and I can say, hey, here are the tools. Like, if you want to stay on track and you want to stay focused on the vision, like, once you have a vision for what you want your life to look like, all the things that happen day to day feel so minute.
It's true.
And so that's what I like, because even this past week, I'm pursuing entrepreneurship and stuff like that. So it's just like every single day is different, but you figure out how to navigate that as best as possible from a positive perspective, and it's all about your thinking, and it continues to work out. But once I was telling them, like, I've experienced this, they were like, wow, like, we didn't even know. Like, I was like, well, because I like to show up 100% no matter what I'm doing. Like, I didn't feel like I felt like I had the tools, so I wasn't necessarily looking for work to aid me through that. But I think it gave them more of an understanding of who I was as a person. So now I'm very vocal about who I am and where I come from, because a lot of people will see what I look like or how I'm portraying myself in a space. Because at the beginning, it definitely wasn't my authentic self. And so people were like kind of not sure how to feel about LJ. And, you know, my friend, like, everybody knows how genuine and how pure of a being that I am, because I'm like, I'm not going to live my life any other way rather than it being pure intention. So I tell everyone, like, if there's something wrong, like, just know that, like, my intentions in my heart were never for it to go this way, or I never intended to be exuding this energy. And so, like, once I kind of had that conversation with Rosemary, because I feel like me and her didn't really have like the best relationship, but like after I had that moment of vulnerability with her, she like saw me, and then it was like, oh, okay, well, this all makes sense,
right?
And so she also another problem I had with Rosemary was just like I didn't even realize it was a problem at first for me, but I'm blind in my left eye.
What?
So I have Crohn's disease. Yeah. So I have Crohn's disease in my left eye. So all my life, it hasn't necessarily been anything that has been a disability in a sense. You know, I just navigated as best as possible. I was born like with no sight in my left eye. So I guess when you're born with something like that, it doesn't really.
Yeah, you don't know any different.
Yeah. But then all of a sudden, I'm in rehearsals, I'm constantly out of line, and I'm usually very spatially aware, like what's really going on. But then I was like, LJ, you're not in front of a mirror anymore, because that's how I did. You know, I'll like peep in the mirror and be like, okay, I'm in line, or like you know. But once I was on stage and you have to like
use the peripheral.
People, yes, I'm like, I don't, and I was literally always on the right side. And I always had to look at the rest of the stage on the side that I was blind. And so I was like, because, you know, in ballet, you don't want to, like, look at anyone.
You're like, wait, where should I be? And yeah, I don't do that.
Like, because, you know, it kind of reads as being uncertain about where you are. But she literally was like, because I literally had a rehearsal where she kept going in on me about not being in line. And then it dawned on me, I was like, LJ, you're blind in your left eye.
That's insane that you didn't even think of that.
Yes. And so I literally was like, I need to tell you this because I didn't even think it was a problem for me, but it is. And this is why it's happening. I didn't realize it. But she was like,
that's incredible.
Okay. She was like, well, she was asking, she was like, does it bother you at all? Like, and I was like, no, not usually. Like, you know, I've never felt like it was a disability. And she was like, well, it's not a disability. And I was like, you right. Like, you just have to, you know, figure out how that works for you.
Yeah.
So she was like, well, just look. Just turn your head. And I was like, okay. Okay. She was like, I didn't think that was appropriate to do. But, like, you know, she just told me, she's like, just look. And I was like, cool. And from then on out, like, once she understood that, like, okay, this boy actually knows what he's doing. Yeah. He just has a lot of things that he's kind of processing and thinking through. And so that's when that whole me being scared of her thing kind of changed. And then I started seeing a lot more success, like, within the company as far as, like, you know, being called to things and just getting great opportunities.
So I can think of two big opportunities you've had, but correct me if there's more. You did Agon just in the digital workshop performance, but then didn't you perform it in something at the theater? Like,
yeah, we've done it like so many times for like Family Saturdays or like the lectures were kind of like the go-to because they don't want to ask like Tyler and Maria to show up at 10 o'clock, you know?
Right, that's
so
true.
Dan and I were kind of like the go-to for Agon, so we've done it like 4 times since then.
That's incredible.
Also, that digital performance, like, oh my gosh, it's so cool to see like what it looked like at first and just looking at how the entire experience is like, and now like the past couple times we've done it, we've had like 2 rehearsals and then we're on stage.
Yeah.
And it's like crazy because we spent this such like, also that time where I was an apprentice in the company still, so I was still doing my full on company schedule. We were also doing like that season, we were doing like Theme, Stars, all of the really hard ballets. And I was also there was the 2 months leading up to workshop, no days off. Like, I had no days off. My back was, like, in spasm during that
I remember
workshop.
you in the PT room.
Constantly. I was really, like, because I was literally on my off days when I really should have been resting. I was rehearsing Agon.
I did the same thing. I did ballet with the school when I was an apprentice. So I did my workshop, then I got into the company, and then they had me come back, and I have this experience where Meryl was making me. Everyone in the company went on spring break. No, everyone in the school went on spring break, but I was still there because the company was there. So she was taking me and rehearsing me in the studios at the school for 2 hours at a time, not facing the mirror. And I just was thinking, like, why am I? So I was working even harder than the other kids in the school, plus company work. Of course, I got like a little injured then, but like, I totally had a similar experience, and it's exhausting.
It is. Oh my God. It's crazy that how, like, we're finding so many similarities.
I know.
But yeah, like, I was exhausted, and like I feel like nobody was understanding how tired I was. Like, I
remember you coming into the PT room, and I'm like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, what's he up to? Like, I didn't even know you were doing workshop.
Yes, and like nobody, and like I would be like kind of half-assing it in class because I was like, this is what I need to get.
You could barely get by.
Yes, and so because I'm like, I have to maintain and still show up as a company member and do all these performances. And when you're an apprentice, everyone's like, well, you don't get to rest. You know, like, you are an apprentice, you should be completely and 100%. But I was like, that's not the case here. Like,
I'm giving 150% right now.
Like, yes, like, you're not even realizing, like, and so that was also a struggle within itself, because I was like, I'm not even performing my best in the company right now because I'm so exhausted. And like, I literally, in one of my meetings with John, like, during Stars and Stripes was like the peak of everything, and I was like, it was Stars. The men's regiment is hard.
It is so hard.
I wasn't even necessarily, I wasn't at my strongest at that point, but also put on top of, like, the exhaustion that I was feeling, the back spasms. Like, I literally could not, like, get off the ground, and like, that movement is all jumping. And then we also did theme, which is insane for like that last movement. It's only like 12 minutes, but like, it's crazy hard. But I was like, oh my God, it's like, how am I doing this right now? And I was like, the only thing I was concerned about was like, do not get injured. Like,
yeah,
I did not want to. I was having back spasms and stuff like that because my spine and stuff was constantly out of alignment because it didn't have time to ever like reset. So I was constantly in the PT room, constantly getting work done. People were like, "What are you doing?" That's
I was like, "What's going on with him?" I just remember thinking, "What's he up to?"
Yes. So it was honestly like being able to, you know, have that performance and watch it and seeing like all the things that I was trying to navigate at the time. I'm like, wow, you really looked beautiful. Like,
yeah,
considering like all the things, because I remember like I felt good about the performance, but I was like, it wasn't my best because I was exhausted. Like, I literally,
That's how I felt about my ballet. I went on stage and I was like, I don't want to be here right now. I remember thinking that.
Yeah, and then it was such a deal because it was like, oh, well, OJ's in the company now. What's he's gonna, like, how good is he gonna be? And it's also that Monday night benefit performance. It was also in the honor of Arthur Mitchell. So I was like,
that's a lot of pressure.
If I go out here and bomb this performance, like, that can't, like, I'm not, honestly, that was also the point where I was like, this is going to be amazing no matter what. Like, it's going to be good. Like, my only thing was just, like, I need to make sure that I support Savannah as best as possible because I knew she was nervous as well.
Well, she wasn't yet a company member, right?
No, she wasn't in the company yet. So, like, also that gap that we kind of had, we're experiencing because, like, I was already working on a professional level. So, like, there's definitely, like, a change in how you work. And she's a very hard worker, like, such a hard worker.
Yeah, she is.
But there was, like, some things that, like, you know, naturally, every time we work, we're already in performance mode. Like, you know, if we're in a rehearsal, like, we're performing it, basically. Right. You know, not till our, like, you know, but I'm going to already be artistically interpreting the work. So for her, she was like, learning it, and then like we'll put the artistic layer on top. So we kind of we have to both navigate and help each other there. And Savannah and I had like I've been choreographing on her like since she got to the school. Because I was like, this girl's gonna be amazing. She don't see it yet, but I see it, and so I kind of like we had this relationship of like artists and muse, and like I just really was like wanting to put her and paint her in the best light as possible because I knew what potential she had. And so all my pieces that I choreographed in the school, she had some sort of starring role.
So I didn't know you choreographed.
Yeah, it's not something I do like often. I definitely can do it well, but it's not like my focus. But it's something that I can do.
That's amazing.
Because in the school, like I was like, okay, like I'll do it, and then I ended up creating some really beautiful things, and I was very proud of the last piece that I created in school, like because I was like I had been envisioning like this all girls point piece, and I tried to do one in Tennessee, but not to shade my dancers or anything. It was nothing like that. But like once you get in a space where you have dancers who can literally execute whatever it is that you want, like I was like, okay, this is the year. Like that piece was amazing. Like I was very, very proud of it.
That is so cool. Would you want to choreograph in the future?
Oh yeah, totally. I listen to pieces of music, and I'm like, well, maybe in a company someday, like I will be able to choreograph on all of these amazing dancers. I literally envisioned ballets like featuring you and like and all these, all the amazing artists. I'm like, oh, okay, like this is definitely something I could see myself doing.
It's definitely a calling, choreographing, because I've never felt called to it at all. Like I have 0 ounce of it in me. I can definitely say like never in my life will I ever choreograph anything for anyone. So if it's in you, it's great that you recognize that because it's just so clearly in some people and not in others to have a vision of what could be and create on people and help them realize their fullest potential.
Yeah.
I want to transition into you have amazing style, which I've noticed from Instagram. Well, I always noticed you always had like an asymmetrical earring, and I wore my asymmetrical earring for you today.
I'm very much so like into big earrings.
Yeah, so I would always notice in class you would always have one earring, right? Am I right?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, and that was kind of like you can't really tell style from class. But through Instagram, you've been posting these like model-worthy shots. You're incredibly well. That first thing, what was that? You did a photo shoot for a magazine.
Yes, that was a collaboration with Ellie Luna and Erin Bino and Kiffany. I don't remember her last name, but yeah, we all just I had pitched this concept to.
Of course, Carla. It was your idea. Oh my god!
And I had been planning to collaborate with those group of people for some time, so they kind of gave me like, "What's your vision like?" So I was like, "Okay, I see XYZ," and then we all just kind of like pulled together. And Carla was like, "Okay, well, this is what we're gonna do makeup wise." And then the stylist that came over to my apartment, and she brought a couple of pieces. A lot of it came from my closet, but we were like mixing and matching. And so it ended up being this like super cool like collaborative experience. And we actually did that shoot back in August of 2019. So that was last year. And the pictures didn't come out until like I think May or June of this
What magazine was it in?
It was for Huff magazine. So I was like, and it honestly like came at a time I was like, okay, someone's gonna pick this up eventually, like just keep manifesting, keep being patient. And I can't imagine Erin was probably getting like so frustrated like submitting them to magazines constantly and trying to get it picked up. But then when it finally did, it was like this really beautiful spread, and I was like, I was like, it was so exciting to see that. And also earlier this year I was in Interview magazine because they did the shoot with a couple of other City Ballet members, and that was really cool. And I had like this full page in the magazine, And I was like, wow, like, this is insane. And so, like, once those things started happening for me, I was like, okay. Because I knew that this is kind of where I wanted to go. Like, I was like, okay, ballet is just kind of like the first step there.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's just kind of like getting a name and like a platform. Because City Ballet definitely does that. And so I definitely, like, after, I think it was before those things started happening, I was like, okay, instead of waiting till the end of the ballet career to create all these other avenues, because I definitely see myself being very wealthy by the age of 25, if not sooner. So
You're amazing.
I'm like, I don't want to, waste too much time. Like, especially once I like got my bearings in the company and I finally like figured out how to maintain myself within that space. I was like, okay, boom. Now I'm mentally sound here. I started working out with, Joel.
Oh,
And
wow. I didn't know that.
yeah, that was in June of last year because I was like, I'm tired of people telling me I'm too weak. Like, that was literally, like, John in my meeting was like, yeah, like, you're great, like, we love you, but we, like, want you to be a little bit stronger. And so I was like, okay, I just need to do the work. Like, so I ended up starting training with him, and I was
Let's
like,
share
oh, okay.
his last name.
Rowdy.
Rowdy.
No, it's Proudy.
Proudy, right.
I was like, that's his Instagram name. But no, Joel Proudy, great trainer. He gets very great results.
That's amazing. Sarah Mearns also trained with him.
Yes, I was like, well, Sarah Mearns is a person who is very long, who has had crazy injuries. She's very hypermobile. And I was like, well, if these are her results, like, because she's been training with him for a while. And, like, I think my first seasons in the company was where she was really, like, reaping the benefits of her training that way. Like, she is so strong.
Yeah.
And it's, like, in its strength, like, it's purely because she's, like, worked up to that.
Yeah.
Because she's always been, like, super flexible and, like, had it. But, like, her strength to, like, everything she does is so
solid.
It's so solid. And I was like, that's how I need to dance. Like, I just need to figure out how to strengthen my body as best as I can. And that's what Joel specializes in. Like, just now that I was, like, actually training these muscles turned in, like, I didn't know what my inner thighs were until I was doing lunges and squats. And because, when you're flexible, like, you don't have to hold any muscles.
That's true.
So, most of my ballet, I was just like, doing, but didn't have the strength to hold any kind of position or,
It's interesting because I come from the other perspective that's not flexible, that never grew. I never had a growth spurt. So everything's always kind of been coordinated and easy for me because everything's close.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear all of the different ways that we all have to figure out ourselves. Like, so my process has been, how do I lengthen? So we're all trying to be like each other in this fun way.
Yes. Like, we all have to, like, find this happy medium of, okay, well, because often I would get like, oh, the short dancers, they got it so easy. I'm like, this is just not their body. Like, I had to, like, come to understand, like, you just have to put in a little bit more work. And no one ever says that. One is
also,
ever like,
then you have the physique that, like, we all dream of. You just have to supplement with the extra strength, but it's, what an amazing, like, I always tell students that have, like, the same kind of thing, like, really hyperextended legs or really flexible feet. Like, you have what everybody wants. You just have to put in a little more effort to make it usable.
Exactly. And so, like, I never had that conversation with anyone prior to me getting into the company. So I think that was also why I was, like, so shell-shocked at what was happening. But once I got to that point of, like, okay, you're longer. You have to do a little, because, in the school I was doing Pilates and doing all the course training and the weight training. But I would see, the shorter dancers getting results more quickly or being able to without, like, 6 more turns. And I'll be like, well, why is it not happening for me? I'm doing the extra hours. But it was the sense of, like, you have to be doing this and doing this strength training for more of a consistent period of time. Like, and now I'm just now seeing, like, my legs starting to tone more, and my like extension is getting better because I'm actually like finding the deep internal strength. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been praying for. Like, I literally couldn't do an arabesque and releve on one leg. Like,
Gosh.
now I can do that. Like, you know, because I've gotten like some calf strength.
That's incredible.
And that's just from like the work that I do with Joel. Like, I haven't trained with him in a while, but just doing that level of work I would do that on my days off. I go work out with him at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, go do all of my grocery shopping, and then I go home and I like, you know, I rest up. But like I started seeing myself get stronger. And even now I'm like, oh my gosh, like it just takes time.
Yeah, it does.
I haven't been dancing as much during this time because, you know, I'm like taking advantage. Like, okay, there'll be like a week where I'm dancing like every day. And then there'll be a week where I just do yoga. I'm always trying to do some sort of movement.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like dancing every single day, like I dance much better when I give myself breaks in between. So I'm like, well, if I have the opportunity now, like,
right,
I'm going to do that. And also, it kind of surprised myself. I guess from, like, because when you dance so often, like, your body never gets time to, like, reset. And because I am so hypermobile, like, once something's out of place and we're still continuing to dance and I don't really have a break, like, I end up just dancing badly.
Yeah.
Like, I can't make my body do what I know it can.
Like, starting to do wrong habits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, my left hip constantly is going forward because I get locked in my lower spine, and so after that, like everything is so tight and I can't lift my legs, and then it's just like off season.
Right.
But now I'm like, ooh, wait, my leg is actually going up a little bit higher. Like there's a little bit more freedom and more strength here, and so it's been cool to like kind of take breaks from ballet.
That's
and then come
great.
back and visit it.
Well, now you'll always have this standard for yourself of what you know it should feel like, and when it doesn't feel that way, you've got to do X, Y, and Z with the PT or whatever strengthening to get there.
Exactly.
Tell me about being an entrepreneur and what kind of sights you're set, what goals you have in the future.
Okay, awesome. Well, it kind of started like I've always wanted to work in fashion, and I just I have a lot of talents in a lot of different areas. So I was like, how do you build this empire off of all these talents? Because people literally didn't know anything about me, like at all. Like until I started like sharing my work, they were like, wow, LJ is like also a stylist and a director, and also decorates spaces very beautifully and can cook, and you know, like all these different things. But I like just started like exposing myself, and people were like, had no idea. So then I was like, oh, well, people are actually like being very open and receptive to what I'm creating right now. And so I guess like I had started my like LaJeromeny Instagram, which is also a fashion brand that's happening very soon. I just had my logo designed.
Amazing.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm really excited for that. But it just kind of started because Corona. I was like, well, I'm not going to sit on my ass for the next who knows how long and not be doing anything.
Right.
And then someone actually reached out to me, who's now like one of my really great business partners, just about this investment opportunity. So I started trading on the foreign exchange market because I was like, this is definitely a very liquidable market. And so I've been learning how to analyze the market and place trades and
amazing.
So I've been trading and things of that nature because like it's very successful market. It's like it's volatile, so you have to really study and make sure you have a support system while learning it. But I've been investing and stuff like that and basically reflipping and growing my money because I'm like I want to have the capital to literally do whatever I want to do because finances limit everything. Like people like where you go, how you eat, like where you live, you know. So I was like, I don't want that.
Like the leaps and jumps you can make towards ideas that you know you can be a dreamer, but you can't take the jump. Yeah.
Right, and that's what happens in a lot of the Black community. Is so many people are so talented and gifted in these different areas, but they don't have the financial capital to actually sustain or create a business. Because a lot of people, will get government funded loans to start their businesses, but they can't sustain because, like, once that support is gone, it's like there is no, my family didn't leave me this building,
There's
or
no
there's
safety
no,
net.
yeah, like it normally is for a lot of different people who are, successful in business. So that's why I started investing, because I was like, I'm going to create my own capital, because I also, just the way that I see my future for my family, for everyone around me, is just very successful. So I'm like, let me just go ahead and learn this skill that is going to be used for the rest of my life. And I'm going to be able to teach it to my family members, my kids, their kids. So it's like, this is definitely a skill that needs to be honed in. So once I started doing that, I started getting access to millionaire mentors, like people who are very successful, people who have been doing multi-level marketing for so long, and like just branding yourself. And just, I was like, oh my God, they're like, you actually have to think about your brand and who you're presenting yourself as, and how that there's so much thought that goes into the things that I post and how I'm posting it. And that's not necessarily, I was conscious of it, but once I joined this like investment group, like it enhanced everything. So I've been doing that since like May/end of April.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, wow, like I have a vision now. Like now that I know that there's like not really any financial limitations to what's possible, I'm just gonna start moving out of faith and just doing whatever it is that I want to do. So
That's incredible.
that's why I started writing business plans. I have like 3. So I want to start a fashion line, and then I also want to start a creative direction magazine for like young Black creatives, so they can share their work as well. But I'd also be producing my own content there, and just creating a space for that. I also see myself owning a vegan restaurant chain.
Are you vegan?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that happened. I was actually really inspired by Carla.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, do I call her Ellie? I think Ellie's more so her like brand.
Her brand, but we know her as
yeah.
Carla.
You know her as Carla.
She's our makeup artist at New York City Ballet, but
she's so talented. I literally somehow because she has a large influence on my life.
She's also a musician. She's also a
a
singer-songwriter.
Yes, makeup artist. She's incredible. She's also a great style. Like she can do everything.
Right.
And so like when I first followed her, like I was like, how do I like become this? Because her energy also was so infectious. Like she just she's just so self-actualized, and I was like,
totally.
How do I become like how not necessarily become her, but how can I embody the same thing? So she was kind of like the reason I literally was like, okay, it was on my radar to become vegan. I was like, okay, I had never considered it before, or like my friends would be like, oh, we're gonna go vegan. None of them.
Does she know how much you look up to her?
Yeah, we talk all the time, and I like post her stuff, and she posts mine. She's very
cool.
Like we're very supportive of one another.
That's amazing.
But I definitely after I saw her, I was like, okay, like I think this might be a lifestyle for me. And then also spiritually, a lot of spiritualists have said, or like the people that I have been watching, were just like, this will enhance, you're going to be more sensitive, and you're going to be able to tap into your emotions more easily. So I was like, well, let me get rid of it, and also in a sense, the food industry is very much so a part of systematic racism, especially in Black communities, and just not being able to go to a good grocery store that does have organic and great fresh produce. Like, it's crazy because even in Harlem, there's the grocery store. I live on like 116. I'm moving, so it doesn't really matter that I just gave out my address. It's fine. Everybody lives in Harlem, but literally, like, the grocery store that's right across the street will have like all the sugar cereals and all the Debbie cakes and the junk food, and their produce section is like this small. But then you go like around the corner to Best Market, and they have massive fresh produce. Like, there's nothing, like I can't even find vegan stuff at the one across the street. So once I acknowledged that, like, wow, this is also a part in systematic racism, and we're all still playing into it. You know, we continue to eat this way in a sense, especially for my people of color. I was like, this system is literally like made to keep you kind of unhealthy and continue to sell you the foods that aren't necessarily.
Well, and I've always been very aware, like, healthy food is more expensive.
Yes.
Like, a carton of blueberries at Whole Foods in New York is like $6.
Yes, and that's also crazy. I also found that, like, people are like, oh, being vegan is expensive, but I'm like, not necessarily. Like, I eat literally just fruits and vegetables. The only time my groceries get expensive is if I'm like buying the vegan burgers or like, you know, or the French fries or like.
What do they call that? It's like certain type
Beyond Burger.
Yeah.
Yes. So I will get those, or like black bean burgers, or just, you know, like the just meatless meats, you know, because I like to be creative at times. You know, I like to try and recreate recipes from what my grandmother and my mom.
Oh, amazing.
So basically my thing is like soul food, like vegan soul food, and that's very much my friends. I definitely see myself opening up like basically like a vegan diner that just kind of basically gives everything but in vegan form, because I feel like a lot of people will be like, oh, that's vegan, no. But it's really about like the care, because I feel like the way I prepare food is so different. And so I was able to like recreate what I thought veganism was, because now I was like, oh, I'm still using like the same seasonings and the same type of love and care that my mom and grandma used to put into their food, and it just kind of has the same kind of sustainability. And so I was like, I really want to create a culture around like being vegan, and just like imagining how the space would look. And, you know, I've been very much so on the page of like, okay, well, this is what the vision is. I've literally been thinking like,
that is so cool. You're just an incredible dreamer. Like I'm like not like that. I don't think super creatively like that. Like I'm more of like I got to get some tasks done, and what am I going to do today? And you're like creating what you want to see in your life in terms of like quality.
Right. So I'm just constantly trying to like keep myself up, because it's so easy to get into a negative space, especially
right now.
Especially right now. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to continue to speak positivity over my life and continue to grow through all of these things. Because, you know, what's crazy is like life never gets easier. You just get more equipped to deal with all the things.
How are you so wise at 19?
And what's crazy is like, you know, everyone's like 2020 is going to be the year. And it's like, it still can be. Like, there's a lot of growth that can still happen.
That's a positive message, because I've been super frustrated myself, and so many people you'll see on Instagram are like, 2020, I just wish it was over. And like, it's like nice to hear a hopeful message that, okay, it's not over yet, and what can we do to make some good out of this?
Exactly. It's like we can either continue to be negative and continue to be on the same frequencies that we have been all these years, but has that proven to be successful? Clearly not, because look where the hell we are right now.
Right.
So it's like, I'm glad, like, I'm hoping that people are starting to love more and be more intentional about the things that they do and how they treat people, because that's important. Like, intentionality is everything. And just day to day, like, I'm just learning more and more about that. And just with this whole, you know, with COVID and Black Lives Matter, and just constantly like having to navigate that, it's just like, if you guys don't realize that life is going to be this kind of like shift of always finding a solution, you either find the solution and pivot, or you sink or swim. And so it's like, let's find a solution. And also another thing is, people need to realize that like, respect. Like, I'm going like, just respect my boundaries. Like, what I've learned is, because I've fought so hard to love myself and set those boundaries in order to be my best self, I'm never going to disrespect anyone else's boundaries. Like, I understand that like people come from different backgrounds, and people are going to have different opinions about different topic matters, but at the end of the day, I'm going to love you regardless because we're both human. Like, so that's just where we are. Like, that's where people need to be, like, understand and be able to acknowledge where there are places that you've been wrong and that there are places where you needed to grow.
Yeah.
And to be better. Like, that's literally that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are so resistant to it. Like, they want, a lot of people, because the people who have been benefiting from this system, they don't want it to change. So they're, like, scared because they're like, what is the system going to look like if it is this way? And it's like, well, don't you just want to be, like, humane?
Or just being like, I'm not racist. This isn't my problem.
Right, and it's like, okay, well, it may not be your problem. You may not have.
But you're part of the society that's existing in this way.
Right, you need to do your part in assisting and aiding in best ways as you can. Also, in not performative allyship. Like, don't just post a black square and think, that is going to do everything. Because I saw a lot of white people posting this black square, and then, like, a few days, months later, a month later, like, we're on the 4th of July waving a flag. Like,
yeah, for you.
Basically just said F the movement. And so it's just like, we have no time for people who don't genuinely want to grow and don't really want to hear about their problems.
And make it a continuing mission.
Right. Like, this is the thing. Like, people have to realize that we have to constantly be this passionate and constantly be vocalizing our feelings about these things. Like, this is definitely not a movement that can just, like, die down. Like, it won't, because I think this generation of people is, like, not going at all. Like, we're literally set out to fix everything that has been, because it's like, we really have to grow up here.
Yeah.
Like, and no one's still, like, no one is, like, moving or, putting enough energy into creating this. And I think that now, like, this generation is definitely very, like, people say a lot of, like, oh, y'all are millennials or so, but it's like, no, we're really here we're the next wave, like, of people who are actually trying to make change.
Yeah.
Just seeing, like, how different, like, a lot of this generation is from their parents, and like, how we all kind of can come together more easily than I feel like it would have been in the past because of old ideals and just kind of what it's been. But it's definitely in a space where I'm going to do everything in my power in order to create this future that I want to see, because it's like, why not? If I have this power, and that's a lot of people don't realize, like, once you align yourself once you really truly, like, understand the essence of your being, you can really do whatever it is that you want to do. And it takes so long for people to get there. And that's why I tell people, everybody's process, everybody's journey is different. Yeah. But you just have to do it. Like, and it's not easy.
But meditation, I think it puts you on the right path. Like, for me, until I properly meditated regularly, I was, like, going a different direction in life, and then suddenly my life, like, hardcore made a different turn, and everything's opened up for me because of that. So it's like, you have to be in tune with the universe in that way to be open to the opportunities when they present themselves. And
right. Once I started acknowledging that, like, none of these things around me happening are a coincidence, like, I'm clearly supposed to learn a lesson from this relationship, or I'm supposed to learn a lesson from this experience. So that, like, when things that are necessarily, like, I don't like to think of things as negative anymore.
That's great.
But
you take everything that comes into your life and see it as a lesson to be learned.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
I've gotten a lot more gratification out of that, and just like, okay, well, because a lot of like, what's not successful is willowing, and because it just prolongs the period of the negative energy. And I know it's, like, easier said than done, because I've been there before. Like I told you, when I first got into the company, anxious, panic attacks all day. Like, I had to, like, face my harsh realities, and, like, I had to really look within myself. What was really bothering me? What am I really unhappy with myself about? And I just had to, like, look in the mirror. Like, people say this all the time, but like it doesn't necessarily resonate until you do it.
Yeah.
And people see, like, people who practice spiritualism, they see the smiling and the positivity and the great energy, but understand what I did to be able to present this self. Like, understand that there were nights where I was balled up in my bed crying and like literally emotionally paralyzed because I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, those moments happen. Those moments happen. And so it's like, this person that you see today is just kind of like the essence of all of those things, and just embracing those and continually growing forward, and like acknowledging that like everybody goes through life. Like, no one's problems are bigger than anyone else's.
Right.
Because we're all going to experience the same things at some point. Like, we've all dealt with loss of a family member, loss of a friend, loss of a relationship.
Right.
Or we've all, dealt with losing like people in your friend group that aren't necessarily, but like when you look back at it, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, I wasn't supposed to be with this person, or I wasn't supposed to have this friendship because they went on this pathway and I went on this one, and that wouldn't have aided one another in each other's journey. Like, we serve the purpose.
You're amazing. You're like literally like, I don't know, like 20 years ahead of where most people are your age, and you're incredible. I don't want you to ever stop using your voice, talking on Instagram, using your platform, following all of these business opportunities and dreams. I think that you're incredible, and I'm just so grateful that you were open to speaking about a lot of vulnerable things today that, most people wouldn't want to share because they're like, well, that's my story, and I don't need to give it to you. And by sharing it, it empowers you because
it's so much more peace.
Exactly.
Because I spend so much time like trying to hide and say like, well, this is because when I first got to the school, like, I mean, because just the way that I like dress would give no indication of like my background. So I was so like, oh, I don't want them to see me as XP. And I was like, well, once I got to the school, I was like, no, like, this is what sets you apart. This is what makes you different.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is like showing people I fought to be here. Like, and then even that like respect that I built within the school, because I was very much so like, yep, I'm from the hood. Like, that it is what it is. But just also understand that I'm here in the same space with you, able to still be on the same frequency. Like, where you come from has nothing to do with the places that you're going to go. Yeah. And that's also another thing that I try to heavily instill. Just because these are your current circumstances doesn't mean it's going to be like this forever. Like, what are you going to do to put yourself in a different position? You gotta know, like, what it feels like to not necessarily be in a great mental state. Like, I've been there, I've done that, like, and now it's just growth. Growth. And just constantly shifting through the things that life presents you with.
You figured it out so much earlier than most people do. So I only envision great things for you. I'm thank you for sharing your story, LJ. I have to go pick up my daughter from daycare.
Oh yes, well, we talked for so long.
I know, it's the longest interview I've ever done.
Yes, oh my gosh. Well, I'm so glad we got to share space with one another, and this is definitely the beginning of an amazing friendship as well. So I'm just excited to see the growth in it, and yeah, definitely don't be a stranger because we're friends now.
I know, this is awesome. Have a great day, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon, Megan.
Okay, bye, LJ.
Bye.